You had mentioned earlier when we first started talking, kind of alluded to limiting beliefs. Can you share with us maybe a limiting belief that you had at one point and what you believe now?
Yes. So I would say my biggest limiting belief was really not, it was the belief that what I had to say, my opinions, my thoughts were boring, unimportant, and nobody wanted to hear them. And this came from, well, a lot of things in my childhood, but I think the biggest impact was that I grew up in a big family. There were 8 of us, 8 kids. So imagine sitting around the dinner table, 8 children, all chattering away. It was very noisy, chaotic. And so to be heard around that dinner table took a lot. And I have a naturally soft voice. Even today, if I try to increase my volume and be louder in a noisy atmosphere, it doesn't work. Nobody hears me. It's just my voice. So when I was a child, nobody would hear me. Nobody was hearing me and nobody was listening to me. And I felt and I believed that the reason was that they didn't think I was important. They didn't want to hear what I had to say. And I thought, well, I must be just boring. I must just be, not have anything important or valuable or interesting. So I should just be quiet. So what I ended up doing around the dinner table, it became a family joke, but I would just turn to the wall and talk to the wall because at least the wall listened to me. And they would stop and be like, what are you doing? I'm talking to the wall because the wall listens to me. You guys don't listen to me.
Oh, I love that.
We laugh about it even today. Janelle talks to walls, but
That's great.
but I realized, in looking back, like that belief took root in that situation, even though it wasn't true. And this is the thing about false beliefs as children, especially, we believe something. We're not developed enough to really process what's really happening. And we just believe something and then it takes root and then other things happen to sort of confirm it. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So anytime somebody interrupted me, I would think, see, I'm not important. What I have to say doesn't matter. And it wasn't true. None of it was true. So really uprooting that and understanding that that's not true led me into this place of being able to speak up more and share ideas, a little bit at a time. And then I started to see that, oh, people are listening to me. They actually find value in what I'm saying. So my whole belief has now shifted to I have lots of things to share that people want to hear. I'm just as valuable as anyone else. My thoughts and opinions matter. My perspective matters. And there are people out there that are looking for that and are waiting to hear it. And, that it can change their lives as well. So I have definitely come full circle because I've written a book. I have my own podcast. I speak on podcasts and summits all the time. And I have, courses I've created. So I'm speaking all the time and I'm sharing my thoughts and opinions, and people are finding a lot of value in it. That was a huge one for me. Just changed everything.
That example actually came perfect timing for me because just probably over the past month, um, COVID opened up and we're now meeting in bigger and bigger groups. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's been a while. It's been a while. Like we've been doing intimate stuff with just a few people here, a few people there. But just recently we've been going to like conventions or openings or whatever. And so I'm having to like relearn, which I think a lot of people are, how to be with people.
Yes.
And not, I don't want to say fighting for attention because that's not what I'm trying to say, but exactly what you're saying, having your voice be heard. And I love that you're saying this because story with me, twice over the last month, in the middle of a conversation, it's loud. Maybe there's 3 or 4 people and then like lots of people having conversations around us. I ask a question. And my question, in order to keep the conversation going, similar to a podcast, in order to keep the conversation going, and my question is not heard. But I internalize that as they didn't want to answer my question. They didn't feel as if my question was valid. They didn't appreciate me as a person. They would have, you know what I mean?
Yes.
All of this stuff started coming up for me. It's happened twice this month. And this last time it happened, I actually had a thought of like, I needed, because it made me feel like an idiot because other people heard me ask.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's like, it's embarrassing. So I made a note to myself of, let's just be quiet, Sabrina. So that came over perfect timing for me.
Yes.
Of like a reminder of sometimes we just actually aren't heard, and we can't always internalize that the way that we think we should be, because a lot of times it's not true.
Yeah. It's how you interpret what's happening that makes the difference. You know, if you put a meaning on it, like, oh, this means I'm not important, or this means it's just noisy in here and people didn't hear me. You know, what is the truth here? And I didn't understand that for the longest time. I just believed whatever my interpretation was, that it was true. And it really held me back. It kept me from speaking up. It kept me from letting my voice be heard and being a little bit more assertive, you know, to say, wait a minute, I have something to say here. You know, I would just shut down most of the time and then go away believing like, I guess I don't matter, you know, something's wrong with me. And
how did your world accept your story as you started to tell your story and speak your truth? How did that make you feel? And then second, how did the world?
When I first started telling my story of the trauma that had occurred in my life, I was very, very nervous about it. I was shaking in my boots, literally, and I wasn't sure how it would be received. And so the first time I shared it publicly was a small group of women, and I got just a little bit of it out. I didn't go into any depth. I just like blurted this thing out. And people were stunned because they knew me and they couldn't believe that this was a part of my past. They were just like, what? And then after that, and I go back to my seat and instantly the thoughts are like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You should not have said that. Oh, they're going to not want to be your friend now. You know, all those thoughts were coming. But at the same time, I felt this heavy burden lifted off my shoulders that I had actually spoken this out loud finally. And then it was a retreat. So then we broke for lunch and nobody said anything to me at first. But then over the rest of the day, one woman after another came up to me with just tears streaming down their face and thanking me for sharing my truth, for being honest and vulnerable, because it allowed them to start sharing theirs. Because if I was able to get up in front of the whole group and share this story, then they realized they were not alone and that they could share theirs too. So that was like, wow. I realized in that moment that it isn't really about my story as much as it is the sharing of my story allows others to be real with themselves. And it opens up that space for them to do that, because the reason I wasn't sharing my story is I felt shame. And that's usually what keeps women, especially from sharing stories from past traumas or things that have happened to them that they thought were, oh, that was my fault, or because it was something was wrong with me, that's why that happened, or I made that bad choice. And so we're covered in this shame, and it keeps us in this isolated place where we think, you know, nobody else is like me. Nobody could understand or accept me. I'm going to be rejected if I share this. And then we're always feeling like we're hiding a part of ourselves. And so for me to share that began to open that up for them. And that's when I realized the value of that I had in my story, that's the value of the story. It's not about telling everybody the sad story of something that happened to me, you know. And I always worried about, if I tell my story, they're going to feel bad because it's a heavy story. And I don't want to make people feel bad, but it's more about allowing them to share theirs, allowing them to start to be honest and open and look at those things in their life that they've been hiding out of shame, and to realize that what happened to you is not who you are. It's just something that happened to you. Who you are is still valuable and worthy, and you're important. And so sharing it will help you to process through that and be able to speak your truth and share, you know, shine your light in the world. And I lost you. Where'd you go, Sabrina? Hello. So I don't know if I'm still live. If I am, I'm going to keep talking, I guess, because we lost Sabrina. So anyway, that is what my experience was. There were people, once I shared it in a book, my story in a book, that it did affect them, like family members especially. But I never had anybody, at least not vocally, tell me, oh, you shouldn't be talking about that. So that was good. I know a lot of times that is a fear people have, that if they share their truth and share their story, that they might be judged for it or criticized for it. And I haven't had anyone tell me that to my face. They probably thought it. But I just had to get to this place where that didn't matter anymore. What others' opinions are about what I've experienced in my life is not what matters to me. What matters is that I speak my truth, that I am true to myself, and that I share what I've lived through and what I know to be true for me. And that allows other people to do the same for themselves. And we just have to be able to do that. We cannot live our lives, worried about what others think we should say or do. We need to live our lives being true to who we are and making our voice heard in the world, is what really matters. So it does take courage and bravery to do that for sure. I was really nervous the first time, but it was also a very freeing experience. I often talk about it like coming out from behind the curtain backstage and out onto center stage of your life, and the lights are shining on you and people are watching you, but you're shining and sharing who you are without fear, because you're who you are and it's important and it's valuable. So it's that confidence of being able to step out there in the center of your own life as yourself, being true to yourself and being the star of your own story and letting your light shine and not worried about other people's lights. They can shine their light as well. It's this freedom to be you and the freedom to love and accept everyone else to be themselves. So it was scary, but it was worth it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know where Sabrina went. I'm just sort of talking. So hopefully, if I'm still live, that people are hearing me. Sabrina, come back. Where are you? And I just think that one of the things that I've learned from my own experience is that, what is the meaning of life? I have to share this, and hopefully people are hearing this, that my dad just recently passed away 6 weeks ago. Tomorrow will be 6 weeks ago he got sick. And then I moved in with him and became his caregiver. So all of a sudden he goes from being healthy to now I'm living with him. And then he passed away a month ago. And he was 98. So he lived a full life and he was very satisfied with his life. He was ready to go. I didn't want to let him go, but through that experience of just watching him decide and choose how he would leave this world, and then reading through all of his letters and going through his things and kind of like contemplating this long life that he led, it's had me thinking about, the meaning of life. Why are we here? And from, just my dad's life, he lived true to himself. He never apologized for who he was. He lived a life of just pouring into other people and treating others with kindness and compassion. He was involved in everyone's life, even his grandchildren. He had 11 grandchildren, 14 great grandchildren, and he spoke into all of us. And so this was really important. Hold on a second. Hello? Oh, hold on. I got to go. Hold on. So, sorry, that was my husband. I thought it might have been Sabrina. So the meaning for life, I feel like, is that we are all here for a reason. And looking at my dad's life, like he never backed down from a challenge, and he lived according to his own gifts. I'm just sitting here talking, Sabrina.
You're awesome. Oh my
I
gosh.
hope somebody's listening.
I was literally like, I don't even know. I don't even because you can't come off screen unless you totally log off. Thank you.
It looked like we were still live, so I just chattering
You
away.
are. You're still live. I saw you on Facebook hanging out.
Good. And then my husband called, and I was like, "Oh, I can't talk right now." I thought it was you.
I love it. You're fantastic. What were you? Tell me.
So I was talking about the meaning of life, and just I was just telling the story. My dad just passed away a month ago, and it was really hard, to watch him go from being healthy to being sick. And I became his caregiver. I was there through this whole thing. And then going through his things and his papers and just knowing, he lived a long life. He was 98 and he never backed down from a challenge. He always lived true to who he was. So I was just, kind of contemplating about, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? And just through my own experience too, just realizing that, or believing that we're here for a reason. And when I had my whole experience of waking up and realizing I'm not living to my fullest potential, and that's what we need to be doing, because we live this life for a certain amount of years and then we're gone. And going through his papers, like seeing the impact and his thoughts and opinions. He was famous for writing letters all the time. He wrote letters to presidents. I found one to President Trump in 2016. He was always writing letters and letting his opinions and thoughts be known. And, but he didn't judge anybody else for their thoughts and opinions. But, he was leaving his mark on the world. He wrote a couple of books, and he never was, when he was ready to go, and he would tell me all the time, like, I'm satisfied. I've done everything that I was meant to do, And so I really believe that that's the meaning of life. Discover who you are, who you truly are, your unique design and purpose, and walk it out, because you don't want to get to the end of that path as a 98-year-old like he was and regret anything and think, oh man, I wish I'd done this. I wish I had done that. So he really has inspired me even more, to live life to the fullest and continue to grow and learn and give and share and inspire others. That's what it's all about, is making that mark and, living life, not just existing and surviving, and not just getting to the next weekend or the next vacation, but, who are you and what are you meant to do, and do it. So that's what I was talking about.
Yeah. I feel like that would be such a good feeling to get to that point, and then to actually be able to say with conviction, like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I feel good. What a great place to be.
Yes, he was there, and it really had an impact on me. And it was like, I switched from trying to keep him alive to, oh, he wants to go. And he is telling me I'm satisfied with the life I've lived, and now it's time to go. And it was hard, but it was also like a very spiritual experience,
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the greatest thing your dad taught you?
Oh gosh, this man had so many stories. I think the greatest thing he taught me is that the most important thing, like he would say this all the time, is in relationships, because he and my mom were married 62 years. And we would always say, what's the secret? And he would say this about any relationship, is to treat others the way you want to be treated. Accept them for who they are. He didn't have a prejudice bone in his body. He was not a judgmental person. When he was young, he was an officer in the Navy. He had a naval career, actually. Very brilliant man, nuclear engineer. Anyway, he has a story where he was a young officer on board a ship, and there was a black sailor who had come on, and this is back in the 50s. And all the men were complaining, we don't want to eat with him. We don't want to sleep with him. And my dad was like, oh, really? Well, then I guess you're all going to sleep on deck. And, you know, that was just, you're going to treat this man with respect for who he is, or you're going to sleep on deck. And the men were like so surprised because, you know, back in that day, it was normal to be racist, I guess. But my dad was not like that. And he taught us the same thing. Like, every person has value. And you do, just because you have a difference of opinions doesn't mean that they're not, you know, equal to you, or that they're not valuable. You know, have an open mind and listen, but stand your ground too. So, you know, I think that was probably, out of everything, that rang through for him in everything that he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like one of the biggest fears that people do have is that thought of not figuring out who they are by the time they reach that point.